Kenya now faces a very real threat of not appearing at this year's Summer Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. This after falling foul of the World Anti-Doping Agency. On Thursday, WADA suspended Kenya's anti-doping body after determining that the East African athletics powerhouse's new laws aimed at combating doping were, quote, a complete mess. Here's Mahia Mutua with more details.
At the London 2012 Olympic Games, Kenya won a total of 11 medals. This year, the nation faces the very real possibility of taking home none. An anti-doping law passed by the country's parliament last month was seen as the lifeline to resolve Kenya's questionable anti-doping standards following months of ultimatums from the World Anti-Doping Body to comply. But now WADA says the amendments made to the original bill rendered the law unsatisfactory, effectively nullifying the Kenya Anti-Doping Agency.
We had agreement with Kenya and the authorities on the legislation that we wished them to put through Parliament. And during the parliamentary process, there were changes. And some of those changes mean that the current state of the law is not compliant with the code.
They have three pieces of regulation/legislation, and one was to be approved through parliamentary process. During the parliamentary process, amendments took place which started to make the law that was passed in Parliament not in line with the other rules and creating inconsistency between the various texts. We have pages of those, I don't want to go into detail, but for example, creating new definitions which would mean that certain infraction would have no penalties or things like that.
Record holder, 1 minute.
This means top Kenyan athletes such as 800 meters world record holder David Rudisha, as well as last month's London Marathon champions Eliud Kipchoge and Jemima Samgong, are in jeopardy of not participating in Rio. However, the final decision as to whether Kenya will be eligible to appear in Rio now falls to athletics' world governing body, the IAAF.
I'm absolutely sure that the authorities and everybody in Kenya will be disappointed in the decision today. But that having been said, it is not a proper policy for a world agency to have one of its major countries non-compliant. We hope that they become compliant as quickly as possible so that their athletes will take part in the proper spirit in the Olympic Games.
WADA also released new data showing that testing by independent authorities in Russia has decreased by more than 2/3 in the past year, also putting the nation's chances of appearing in Rio in peril. The IAAF is set to decide on Russia's case at a meeting on June the 17th. Mahia Mutua, CCTV.
Well, for more on this story that has certainly got a lot of Kenyans talking, we're going to get some analysis now from veteran Kenyan sports journalist Elias Makori. Mr. Makori, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, there's been a lot of shock from Kenyans following this latest announcement from WADA, in particular disappointment being expressed by many sportsmen and women themselves. But just explain to us what the statement from WADA, what it actually might mean for Kenya's Olympics participation.
Well, it's quite alarming, but I'd say it should not really disturb us too much, because what WADA is saying is that well and good you have legislation in place, but there are a few aspects of it that need to be, relooked, knocked into shape. There's still enough time for that to be done, for the legislation to be thrown back to Parliament so that the specific issues that WADA is raising are addressed well in time for the Olympics. They should be concerned, but not really. I don't see Kenya being locked out of the Olympics.
Of course, what is most concerning for some, though, is that Kenya is considered one of the world's greatest distance-running nations, one that everybody will be looking to see at the Olympics. It almost seems not right that Kenya should have gotten to this point at all, that, WADA is really pressing on sports administrators here. How did we get to this point?
Exactly. That's... In Kenya, unfortunately, the government, and especially the ministry in charge of sport, they are used to these knee-jerk reactions. They only react when prompted. These issues came back way before the Beijing Olympics, and we were given a lifeline by WADA and UNESCO, who won that particular charter for the anti-doping issues. But the government was a bit slow, dragged its feet, and now WADA is saying, hey, look here, we've run out of patience. We really need to see things actually being done, and the real threat of being locked out of the Olympics is the reality, which also Brazil was in a similar position in March. The legislation was thrown back, and then the president, former President Dilma Rousseff, issued a presidential decree incorporating the changes that WADA needed, and they got off the hook in March. We're in a similar position, and that's why I'm confident that we'll get over it and we'll get to the Olympics, but really it didn't have to come this far.
So considering the time between now and the Olympics, exactly what does Kenya need to do to ensure that Kenyan athletes will be participating in Rio this year?
Well, WADA has raised a few issues. I've not seen, most of the people, even the Olympic Committee, have not seen what specific issues they're raising. These need to be looked into, thrown back to Parliament, and the legislation, amended to incorporate what WADA wants to be seen. I believe there's enough time to do that. Depending on the urgency, Parliament is on recess now until next month. There should be a special sitting called to look into this particular issue so that the athletes can focus on training for the Olympics and let this dark cloud hanging over their heads get out of their way, because at the moment it's affecting their mental preparations.
Absolutely. Well, we'll hope to see that that does get sorted out at the next parliamentary sitting. Thank you very much, Elias Makori, for that analysis on WADA's latest announcement concerning Kenya.